warm welcome to Happy Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Nadine and I'm coming to you from northern New South Wales in Australia, and I'm originally from Montreal, Canada. I've got the camera a bit further back today because I don't know what's happened. Hopefully you can't really tell, but I touched something into my eyes today and they're just so swollen. It's crazy. Like, I don't even want to get into the details. They're very swollen and blistery. Okay, but I feel okay. So I thought I would record my video because it is Wednesday and yeah, it's been a week since my last video and I've got lots to share about. So yeah, today, this is a knitting podcast. However, today it's going to be an episode half about knitting and half about sourdough bread making. I spoke last week about how I've been getting back into sourdough bread making after quite a big hiatus, and I'm really trying to get it going with my same super easy method, but with some ancient grains, so Khorosan flour and spelt flour. So last week I asked if anyone was interested in me sharing my recipe or how I make it, and I did get some feedback that somebody would like to know, so I thought, awesome, I just need one person to say, yes please, and I'm happy to share. So if you stay tuned to the end of the video, I'm going to show you how I make my bread. It's sourdough bread, it's super easy, there's no kneading, there's no stretch and folds. It's honestly the easiest thing you've ever done. Just before bed, you just have to throw some things together and that's it. So stay tuned if you're curious on how to make sourdough bread. Okay, and then just for knitting, I've got two whips to talk about. One is a cardigan and one is a pair of socks. And what I'm wearing today, this is my Sonray sweater by Jennifer Steingass, who is, I think, Knit Love Wool. I think that's also what she's known by. And I've knit it in Nundle Woolen Mill yarn, and it was undyed, and I dyed it with food coloring. I'm just gonna pop in close so you can see. I mostly used blue and a little bit of red, so it kind of made some like little purpley spots, and then just the undyed for the color work. It's a knit in the round color work, a round yoke color work, and there's also some color work on the sleeves, and it's just a roll. Yeah, there's no ribbing at the cuffs, there's ribbing at the neck, and there's ribbing at the bottom. I love this jumper, it's very cozy. The only thing is I regret that I made it in a superwash yarn because, yeah, I'm not a big plastic fan. So I do prefer non-superwash yarns. Okay, it's very windy. If you hear some noises outside, it's a crazy windy day. I think there's some storms in Sydney at the moment, but yeah, we actually don't have any rain today, which is a miracle, but it's super windy. Actually, this morning when I took the dog for a walk, I thought I'd be right just wearing this, but I came back after going outside and I put another sweater. It was a 2-sweater day. I put a cardigan over this and a shawl because the wind was just cutting right through this. That's how windy it was. Okay, so for my knitting, my first work in progress is the Corin cardigan by Rebecca Clow, the Craspedia. This is my third one. And the other two I knit in a combo of cotton and wool, Pulse Coast, held double. And this one I'm knitting in 100% wool. And it is Patagonia Organic Wool by Juniper Moon. And I'm holding it single. It's a little bit thinner than the pattern calls for, but I'm using a bigger needle. I'm using a 6mm needle and knitting a little bit bigger size than I normally would. So last time I showed it, I had just done the body, so now I've done a sleeve. And this pattern calls for decreases in the sleeve, which I did in my other two, but this one I thought I would try just knitting it straight and then rapidly decreasing here before the cuff. I'm gonna put the name on the bottom of the website I went to, but did you know that you can use I think it's called a knitting calculator. And so because I didn't follow the instructions for the decreasing, I entered into the knitting calculator the number of stitches I started off with and the number of stitches that I wanted to get to, and it tells you how in one round, how to decrease so that you get to the number that you want. So I used the number that I had here, and then I looked at her pattern where I should be finishing, the number of stitches that I should finish with, pop them into the calculator, and it says something like, I don't know, knit 2 together, knit 2 5 times, knit 2 together, knit 1 6 times, or something like that. It just tells you how to do it evenly. So yeah, that was perfect. Then I just did the ribbing and Italian sewn binder for the cuff. That was all good. And if you've been watching, you'll know that I'm kind of playing yarn chicken, or I thought I was, but in the end, turns out I've got more than enough. I thought I was gonna have barely enough. I've got more than enough. So when I started the cardigan, instead of starting with the ribbing, I straight away went into the pattern work, and I thought I'll save the ribbing till last to see how much yarn I have. But now that I know I've got plenty, I went ahead and did the ribbing on the bottom. This is actually the second time that I knit the ribbing on the bottom. The first time, so yeah, if you watched the episode where I talked about, I used a provisional cast on with a barber cord, and I've never done that before. It was a different technique to me, and it ended up having, as I picked up the stitches back on to my needle from the barber cord, it ended up having these weird lines on one side. But I thought that weird line of stitches was going to be on the inside. However, after I cast it off, I looked at it and went, oh my gosh, I did it the wrong way. Those weird, I can't even explain it. There was just this weird, it was like a carrying of yarn. And yeah, I was just like, nah, can I live with it? I showed my husband and he was like, nah, start over. I was like, okay. So unfortunately, I had used the Italian sewn bind off. I don't know if you have ever tried to frog the Italian sewn bind off, but it is not for the faint of heart. It was very time consuming. It probably took me about at least an hour to just pull out that one line. So there's a downside for you of the Italian sewn bind off. I can't think of any others because I love it, but it is so time consuming to pull it all out. But I did it, and then I went back to, I didn't use a lifeline, I just ripped. And then when I got to the beginning, I just, took my needle and hoped that I was putting them through the right place. And actually it's quite funny because that line is not on either side now. So I think I actually ripped out an extra row somehow, or I don't even know, but there's no line anymore. So it's just that on both sides. And because it was my second time doing this ribbing, this ribbed hem, I decided that I would try something a bit different. So I've been knitting this whole cardigan with English style knitting, and I decided on this bit, the ribbing, I was going to try my hand at combination knitting. So combination knitting is where you're holding your yarn like continental, but when you do your purl, the way that you grab the yarn for the purl is kind of the easier way, but it ends up leaving that stitch twisted. So then when you turn around and go the other way, all your knits, you have to knit through the back loop. So it was fun. It was interesting. At first I wasn't sure. I was like, is this giving me a twisted rib? But no, it's regular ribbing. It just looks a little bit different. I'll see if I can hold up that versus my regular ribbing that I did on the cuff. See if we can see a difference. Yeah, I don't know, but it was fun. I always like to try new things, you know, keep the brain going, and you know, apparently when you do new things, you fire new neurons in your brain. So yeah, I thought I would do it just for fun, and I hopefully have left myself enough yarn to do the Italian sewn bind off. I usually end up using too much yarn. I think you're meant to use 4 times the length, and that ends up being too much for me, and which is a really big pain in the butt when you're doing the sewn bind off, because you're like pulling and pulling the yarn with your needle. So I think this should be just enough yarn. It's a little bit over 3 times the length, but yeah, not quite 4 times. So anyways, hopefully that's gonna work out. And then I've just got the other sleeve to do, and then pick up and do this is the V-neck version. So pick up here, all the way around the neck and down the bottom, and then do my button band. And I think because it is the V-neck, she mentions in the pattern that some people, it calls for 4 buttons. Some people found that the top button was too high. And I think I would agree with that on my blue one that I made with the V-neck version. So I think I'm only gonna do 3 buttons lower down. I feel like that's the case for most V-neck cardigans, that top button is almost like too high. So yeah, I'm just gonna, even though the actual V may end here, I'm still gonna put my first button a little bit lower. And I think that's just gonna sit nicer when the cardigan is closed. Yeah, happily trekking along on that. Gonna grab my drink. If you hear some snoring, it's my dog. We just came back from a walk. Okay, so my second work in progress is from 52 Weeks of Socks. This is the first one. And I'm making the Craspedia socks by Andrea Mary. I think this is the first Andrea Mary pattern I've ever done, and it's lovely. The yarn I'm using is the same that is called for in the pattern, which is Mondim by Rosa Pomar. Retrosaria Rosa Pomar Mondim, the longest name in sock yarn. So I'm using this purple that I got at Stash Lounge in Calgary. So here I go. Okay, I think I completed this first sock last year, like sometime last year, and I just had zero motivation to make the second one. That never happens to me with socks. I always knit both like together straight away. However, this was the first time knitting this one that I used shorties. And so it was last year, back when I was knitting exclusively English style, and I just found the cabling to be very tedious. I think I'll have to say, knitting cables with sock yarn is very hard. Like, I don't know, it's just very fiddly. But I was motivated to make the second sock because now I'm getting more used to knitting continental. So I thought I would give it a go. And also, this sock I actually ended up re-knitting because it was too small. So I knit the first one on 2.5 mils, and then this one I went and bought 2.75 millimeter needles, and it turned out bigger. But now, with the 2.75 millimeter needles and continental, the sock is again way bigger. So I don't, it's so funny. Let's hold them up together. Oh my gosh, it's almost a centimeter wider. So I think either I'm gonna have to live with one sock being tight and one sock being loose, or when I finish this, I might re-knit this one to be a bit bigger, because to be honest, it is a little bit on the tight side. Or I could just leave this one and then I might have enough yarn to do another one, I don't know. But yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. This is the first time I'm doing cables with continental, and I was a bit apprehensive because I do not like doing lace with continental style. I find the yarn overs to be a bit fiddly, so I wasn't sure if I'd like it for cables, but doing cables with continental versus English, I find it exactly the same. There's no real difference there. So yeah, I'm very happy, trucking along happily on this pair too. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that one. Okay, so if you were just here for the knitting, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. But if you are interested in watching how I make my sourdough bread, then stay tuned. Or stay tuned anyways, because I don't know about you, but I just love watching knitting podcasts, and I should say mainly listening to YouTube knitting podcasts, because that's when I'm knitting. I'm knitting and I'm just listening to somebody else talking about their patterns. But if they talk about something that else that I, weaving or spinning that I'm not really familiar with, I just listen and I just keep knitting. So recipe I have been making since my daughter, who just turned 19 last week, since she was about 3 years old. So for 16 years, off and on, I've been making this bread with wheat flour. I'm gonna put the video, or put the name of the video here from the original recipe that we follow. Let there be a warning to you, this video is very strange. The recipe is amazing, but the video, for some reason, it's very creepy, and it's hilarious when you read the comments. There's, you know, the comments are hilarious. Something like, I came here for a sourdough recipe, and I've left feeling possessed. You know, it's a very strange video. They have, I don't even know where to start. They have this, it's called the 1, 2, 3 method, and they've got this weird plastic hand where they pull these levers and it's like 1, 2. It's very weird. And at the end, there's a lot of like, they put a lot of photos while they're talking. Anyways, I'm gonna give you my version so you can watch that and not feel possessed with watching a YouTube video. So yeah, like I said, I've been trying to avoid wheat. Here in Australia, the wheat is very different from the wheat that I'm used to in Canada. So it's really triggering for my eczema and my allergies. And it's not just me. A lot of people that I know that have moved here from Europe or from North America, they have a lot of trouble digesting the flour and the milk here. I think the ideal flour would really be Italian flour. Apparently that's the best flour for digesting. But yeah, I don't, you know, I try to buy Italian flour when I'm in the shops, but I just thought I would try to eat Spelt and Khorosan, which are ancient grains. They apparently have not been genetically modified through the years, so they're just easier for your body to digest. However, last year I really tried to get Spelt sourdough going. I just couldn't do it. Spelt flour, I would put the same amounts of water in my regular recipe, but the dough was just floppy and it would just sink, and it just made terrible sourdough. I could not work out the proportion of water to flour. I just couldn't do it. I just got frustrated. I just said, forget it. And so we were just buying Spelt flour from the bakery, but that gets expensive. It's like $9 for a loaf of Spelt sourdough. And if I go to the market and buy Khorosan sourdough, which I just started doing, that's even worse. That's like $10 a loaf. So I wanted to try to make it myself. And Khorosan flour, I discovered when trying the regular recipe with Khorosan, is the opposite. It's a really dry flour. The dough is always too dry the next day. And you can't really tell when you're making it because it just, as it's absorbing the water, you know, yeah, you only notice the next day. So something clicked. I was like, well, my Spelt flour is always too watery and the Khorosan's always too dry. Let's try mixing them together. So I tried doing half-half, and it was still a little bit on the wet side. So the Cinderella zone that I found is 2 cups of Khorosan and 1 cup of Spelt. Okay, so it's been working for me. Just to be transparent, I wanted to say in the video, I'm gonna show you the steps, and then in the end, I show you the bread. That is unfortunately not the bread that I made. We lost power today, so when my timer went off to get the bread out, I opened the oven and the oven was cold, the power had gone out. So the bread, yeah, was like not even a quarter of the way cooked. So it ended up, yeah, just kind of dropping and not looking like a regular bread. So full transparency, I show you the recipe, but the bread that I show at the end was the loaf from last week. But had the oven not have turned off, it would have looked exactly the same. Just wanted to let you know. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much for watching and giving me a like, leaving me a comment, letting me know, do you make sourdough? Do you make any other kind of bread? What are you making? What are you knitting? Where are you watching from? And yeah, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will see you next week. Please enjoy this video of me making my sourdough. Here is how I make my sourdough bread. This is my starter. It is not very active. You can see that there's no bubbles going on inside the starter. So I'm gonna feed it. To feed your starter, you need to use half flour and half water with slightly less water than flour. So there's my water I've added the flour. I'm going to take a chopstick and stir. If you're just using regular wheat flour, then you would stop there. But for my dough, I'm trying to use, and so yeah, here's where I realized, oopsies, there is a huge gaping hole in my bag. So I'm just going to pour it. So yeah, this is the Khorosan flour. So the big jumbo bag was Spelt, and oh, there's my Ariana cardigan. Let's all admire it. So that is Khorosan flour and Spelt flour in the jumbo bag, and I'm just stirring it with my chopstick. The texture should be between toothpaste and pancake batter. Doesn't that sound yummy? Okay, it's been about 8 hours. Let's look, and you can see the bubbles from the side, and there they are on the inside. So this starter is nice and active, and this is when you want to make your dough. So I'm going to pour my starter, not all of it, I have to save some for the next time, but pour the starter into the bowl. To this, we're going to add, so again, this is the 1, 2, 3 method. 1 is for 1 cup of water. I'm using my PyMag filtered water, but you can just use regular water, and oopies. Okay, quite a lot of spilling going on, but there's my 1 cup of water for the number 1. The number 2 is 2 teaspoons of salt. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons. This is, I think, Australian sea salt, but you could use whatever salt. There's 1 and 2, and the salt is an important step because it helps regulate the speed at which your fermentation is going to happen. So stir that all together. And then to this, the number 3 is going to be 3 cups of flour. So if you're using wheat, you would just add 3 cups of wheat flour. But I'm trying to make this ancient grain. So I'm going to use 2 cups of Khorosan and 1 cup of Spelt. The Khorosan flour makes, if you just use straight up Khorosan, it would be a little bit on the dry side. And if you use straight up Spelt, which I tried last year, I wasn't very successful. The dough was always way too liquidy in the morning. So I'm trying to do this method of 1/3 Spelt and 2/3 Khorosan, and it has been working. So go ahead and grab your chopstick and stir it all together. You're just trying to bring the mixtures together. You do not need to knead. This is a super duper easy way to make bread. After this, you're done. So you just bring it all together, making sure that you get all the dry bits into your mixture, kind of scraping down the flour off the side. You can see it's kind of coming together in a bit of a ball. Nearly there. There we go. It's made a bit of a ball. It's all come together. So I'm just going to clear off the chopstick, scrape down those little bits on the side. Okay, now you're going to grab your very fancy piece of equipment, otherwise known as a plate, and put it on top. So for this part, you don't need to have it breathe. You can just put a plate on top. But for your starter, it's important that you use a cloth because it has to breathe. The bacteria has to come from the air into your vessel, and that's what's going to make the fermenting. So here I'm feeding my starter again like I did at the beginning. A bit of Khorosan, a bit of Spelt, and water. Again, equal portions, flour and water, slightly less water. I'm going to grab my trusty chopstick and stir it up again. And again, that's between toothpaste and pancake batter consistency. I'm going to have to get a new jar for my starter soon because it's starting to make cement along the sides there. Yeah, that's probably why, because I use it to scrape it off. And then you're just going to grab your cloth, pop it on top with an elastic so that it can breathe and it can become active again for next time. Okay, let's have a look at the dough close up. And we're going to leave that on the bench overnight or during the day if you made it early in the morning and let it rest. Okay, it's the next morning. Let's have a look. So you can see that it has changed. It's fermented. It's got a bit of bubbling action in there. So you're going to want to grab, in my case, I use a cast iron pot. It's important to have a pot with a lid. And you want to sprinkle some flour on the bottom. You can see this is our designated sourdough pot. It's got some flour from the other day. So you're going to want to put this pot and the lid in the oven at 220 degrees Celsius for about, well, until it's hot. And then when it's nice and hot, you take it out very carefully with some tea towels or oven mitts, and you sprinkle a bit of flour onto your workbench. And then we're going to take the bread dough, and we're going to carefully scoop it out onto the flour. So my bread, it kind of stayed together quite nicely because I guess of the proportions of flour that I'm using with the Khorosan and the spelt. And just do a little bit of a stretch and pull in 4 directions. So on each side, give it a little stretch and then flip it over. Stretch and flip it into the middle rather. And then I just kind of make sure that it's all covered in flour. No sticky bits. And then I'm just kind of twisting it and tucking it under. Some people do a bit of scoring on the top. I didn't do it, but you could take a little sharp knife and do a little score on the top. You carefully place it into your hot pot. And then you're going to grab the lid. Do not forget this lid is crazy hot. So make sure you have something to grab the lid with. And then place it on the top. And again, the whole pot is crazy hot. So make sure that you grab it carefully with tea towels or with oven mitts or whatever you use. So I'm going to pop it into the oven, and it's going to bake for 20 minutes with the lid on. So set a timer, and after 20 minutes, you take the lid off and continue to bake it for another 20 minutes. And then it's done. After baking for 40 minutes, here's what it looks like. Nice and crispy on the outside and soft and chewy in the middle. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make the easiest sourdough bread. Thanks for watching.